Oh, Fox News just recently reported a double stabbing near the Mark Twain house. They have the Mark Twain house and Heritage Beecher Stowe house conjunct to the state capitol. A number of people with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices in Connecticut and Weathersfield, Connecticut, have roles with the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News, which is conjunctive to next to the state capitol and other spots closer to the state capitol and like the different. It's almost the same distance as Fox News is from the state capitol as the Harriet Beecher Stowe and Mark Twain houses together there. Also, the original founding locations, like in Weathersfield, Connecticut, where George Washington had to come to counter extort with James Madison's plan, and with the leverage behind the founders behind that plan, plural, because George Washington didn't have the means to force people to an extent only till they could to break the laws and then have to defend themselves by relying upon a unity handed to them. That's how crazy the laws were against every single person. And everyone had to pretend to have free speech to an extent. Otherwise, that body was sentenced for a method, a human fact treating nature breaching method. And so we're going to address this and how that breaching method reassigned with nature communicates with black people's rights of life. All rise. In other words, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, right before a 2006 district court case, one of his co-defendants in that case, Thaddeus Grabowski, only time I ever saw him outside of a courtroom, he repeated demonstrations to me and threats to me, demonstrated as threats of his rules with identity thefts and frauds, with people intercities, with the intelligence community involved with him, and his co-defendants and their family members. Now, his co-defendants and their family members were also recorded involved with news predicate acts. Connecticut's Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others. Mark Violet and others with the military have roles with them with that. And with people on my street associated with them and associated with a Mayana family / families. And they said tomorrow. And these are also people that sought me out to make confessions about their rules with people on my street, increasingly involved with Weathersfield Police and other police departments, switching and forging names, falsifying police reports, putting fake conversations with me, fake transcripts with people tied to them doing the same thing since I was a kid. An O'Brien family and a Colo family, from where they moved to, which was reportedly from next to the state corrections offices. A bunch of people next to the state corrections offices have roles also with these people's family, extended family members, for them. Like people with the name Scalora involved next to the World Trade Center, and with names at the World Trade Center, and with the names with the court next to it, involved with and as people with courts cases, intercities and interstates, all sides of the criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch names, the lawyers, their sources, their family members, any one of those, including the interbranch and the intelligence tied to them. They're in the news at the same time, but in the same sequence shifts. Predicate acts with facts, predicate acts methods roles. With the predicate acts with facts method, we know that a breaching method reassigned black pupils' rights of life, a part of a predicate acts method, and had roles with that as methods, because those are methods, styles, needs, and natures that were forced, tricked her, and persuaded to pretend they could speak for the sciences or for the names of the people of the sciences or relativity. In other words, we have. So I've been begging them because they have all excuses. They have a whole wire crime acts and methods. The news places sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have digital crime acts methods with the intelligence at their places and the ones next to them. A whole bunch of intelligence families next to, like Mendez police, brothers. They attached me to fake conversations with one I met at the police station when I was an adult. I never had a word of conversation with him in my life, the older Mendez police brother. These are increasingly people with the Saudi attackers, timed collusions through other natures of organized crimes, timed instances of identity theft, fraud, slanders. And these are people involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first divorced. Increasingly, at least two retired Weathersfield police chiefs involved with the same house, slash S involved intercities, intra-cities, inter-campuses, intra-campuses, including ones I don't even know if they went to, but it's all recorded. But these are people also with whiting forensics involved with them personally and professionally. And a whole bunch of people tied to them. Changing and faking what's digitally recorded. Faking and changing actually digitally or actual phone transcripts. And just putting fake conversations and ties to kids at police departments and in campuses, databases. No one's watching because there were also influences from off the campuses doing that and then influencing the people that act tied to those predicate acts. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a police form. Again, there are a whole bunch of lawyers also involved with the news agencies and other natures of and journalists and their family members have roles with Main Street and the spots next to Fox Connecticut News. The difference of the guilt of the intelligence families there or at Fox News is to hide the guilt that was his time collusion slashers with a whole bunch of other countries. These are people with spots next to the campuses, intercities, who have roles with untimely deaths, murders, names next to body dumping spots, involved with their prisons, as all kinds of predicate acts with facts and organized crime methods associated with the needs and natures associated with the Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices. And so increasingly they have a whole bunch of people in ways that, like the lawyer of the Thaddeus Grabowski and his co-defendants, other various natures of federal criminals, to and as them. And one of his co-defendants was former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, in the 2006 district court case involved with Thaddeus Grabowski right outside of Fox Connecticut News. But I can't get them onto paper. Interbranches refusing to identify themselves legitimately. Interbranch, intercities, every year since the World Trade Center attack, they have been stacking predicate acts with facts rolls. A breaching method keeps whole careers, criminally poor influence, tactically delusions raw. Forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method. A whole bunch of different countries are involved with the families involved with this. I don't know if Christopher Murphy, the senator, because there are other senators involved, and is involved with Mr. Murphy, who was a principal at my campus. I never had a word of conversation with Kevin Harris. He's involved with a whole bunch of people who've been stacking predicate acts with facts and databases and influencing people to act on to pretend plant evidences. Their collusion /S with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The courts, the police forms switching the same sequence as names, putting time collusion with the news, identity theft, fraud, slanders. That's one of the things that is against every human being, sickly, distinctly, but non-distinctly too. Where and how we have replaced what our founders and what nature itself communicates about what the breaching method did, and with sustained roles with itself, and replacing black people's whites of eyes, and what it communicates about natives too, and about science. See, we are a human species body of individual bodies, an distinct individual species body, made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. For that which is generating this, which is not us, but it is us anyway, because it's all things anyway, because it is showing us there are totally different species, individual species bodies. And each one of them is made up of a whole bunch of individuals' bodies. Excuse me, black. So we have black people's whites of eyes. And we have address left. This which is inseparable from the subject treatments of American history and of the histories before us. Their founders' histories and our founders' history, our founders' communications, which is distinct from what they said, is replaced, and they declassified this for us. But the breaching method showed originally and still the names of the people, the sciences, how to read precedents and statutes, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and how that could be discerned. And so, and it showed them the only ways they could hide it is also simultaneously they weren't even really self-valuing that having been. So the precedents, the statutes, the principles, treatments of the past, they are principles, criminal and seditious natures of principle treatments. They are styles of logic, natures of logic that can't afford that, can't defend that, and afford to be short words with convictions proper by how nature answers our question, how nature communicates with these things replaced, and with theories that have no right even being, right where the obligations of the sciences are to teach relativity / hyperrelativity. That's right where they have theory and tactical delusions. Black pupils, there are organized crime methods, concentrated roles where they have research campuses. And this is manifested in the opinion styles, tactically misinformed. In other words, please get me off of fake conversations with WFSB. They can't be communicated through digital or wire because their intelligence and the difference of the intelligence them or next to them or conjunctive to that is also has been exploited. And they are conjunctive to the state judicial branch offices, which is increasingly involved with the World Trade Center attack, predicate acts with the other countries, and the names with our own that were collusions with them with WFSB through time, where they've been doing their stories. But it's not just them. Forgiveness is because it's a whole bunch of other, the other networks. It's next to Fox Connecticut News and or at it. The difference of that. The same thing with WTNH. Their sources put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Intelligence families associate with the name, a whole bunch of different names. But ones with the name O'Neill have whiting forensics involved with a principal upskirt nature. Forced with sexual and medical offenders of kids personally and professionally. Foreign and domestic doctors involved personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors and their family members and their extended family members and their ties to themselves, involved with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and cover-ups. And with the ones that are increasingly with the police and courts refusing to identify themselves legitimately, and time collusions with the FBI, grouped too with predicate acts with the courts, like New Britain Superior Court, is increasingly collusions with foreign and domestic military too. A whole bunch of people tied to a Mark Violet and people I don't know their names even, with the state capitol and conjunctions to it. And a Chick Casper sought me out one time when I was a little kid. When I was young, and one time went around that time, between I think between 2011 and 2006, around the time of Gray Kyler's reported shooting. It might have been 2004. 2006, I believe it was. But there were people involved with intercampuses, intercities, with some untimely deaths, murders, and body dumping spots years apart, untimely deaths years apart, time collusion /S, use /S of that rules. The same ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, home break-ins in the area years apart, with time connections and time use /S for that recorded. Also on Facebook, and they knew that I explained how it's discernible. That's why they're trying to cover up live progressions, putting me in fake conversations. Also, they pretended through the news that I spoke with the police as a kid, too. In other words, did not get them off the fake conversations with me. Many people tied to this Dillon family involved with Parks and Rec, and Recreation, and Weathersfield, involved also with Hartford Hospital's campus. A whole bunch of people with Hartford Hospital, involved with a whole bunch of people from other areas, involved with predicate acts on my street since I was a kid. And creating tied to this Leahy family that fake conversations with me. Apologize too to Judge Napolitano and stop playing games. Get on paper, one name and sequence. They're using mail and wire crime methods too. Put fake mail too, change mail. A Leahy family pretended through the mail to other people they had conversations with me. Get me off the fake. I never had a word of conversation with them. No, I had one word ever with either. In other words, one of them was apparently the father of one of the other Brendan Leahys, who's also father. They have their kids and their grandkids involved on Facebook too, with little cowards. With that girl, they have the little girl on Facebook. I never had a word of conversation with her. There are a whole bunch of people tied to a Leahy family, involved with judges and prosecutors, people with the Connecticut District Court, involved with the Brian Silver. I never saw him on my street either, but they're involved with the ones with the Leahy putting fake transcripts, all kinds of federal evidences, crimes, and rackets within as prosecutors and judges, all kinds of collusions with all natures of crime scenes and campuses. Where's this Subby Bajerio doing too? Subby Bajerio involved planting evidences on the sides of the campuses with the judges and prosecutors, the judicial branch offices, corrections offices. What are they doing with the judicial branch offices? With Weathersfield Pizza House, increasingly involved with various natures of organized crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and sequence shifts, and child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart tied to them. I never saw Maria Vazina on a Weathersfield campus in my life, too. Make sure you guys understand that. Increasingly, they have roles with intelligence associated with Mark Violet, Eric Jensen, a whole bunch of people in intercities involved with Hartford Hospital and the houses and businesses next to it. These are not legitimate intelligence originally and still. They're criminally foreign impulse, tactically illusions raw. It's nothing personal against them too. They'll tell you they were influenced since they were kids to act tied to their roles with recorded predicate acts methods pretended into databases. Get them on paper, one name and sequence, into branch. Let's go. They have more roles with violence on my street, and it's going to be countered. But they're doing it through other people. So we have to get this Phil Cololo on paper and the people tied to him with the bike swerving and screaming out one of the names of one of the girls he's involved with abuses of, and since she was a young girl. These are people that the intercities with the town lines too. So a whole bunch of people with the extended family members, two of leasing agents involved with a Phil Cololo and Whiting forensics, with state police families, interstates, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, foreign and domestic militaries, and borders, states' names, and borders, countries' names coming in to hide live progressions, long-term connected, shown needs to by the breaching method, has them countries differences racketeering, worse than war crimes, at countries A through Z, suits and ties, counters, exceptions, as an array, sensing for the breaching method, anyone noting other, trying to demonstrate other, as our founders communicated for us to demonstrate other with, and as nature itself does. Instead, they have what James Madison left to classify for himself, the rest of the founders, and for ourselves behind their backs. And then they have the self-valued roles for telling American history, changing who they said are our founders and why and how they said it. The only one we know the name of is James Madison. And you guys won't even allow people to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, let alone the counter-extortion, and what really caused the Declaration of Independence, the Constitutional Convention. You guys can't afford to have discern free speech alone, and that by per nature is hyper-evidential. That's the Constitution on a bridge. That's why in highway rights are too numerous stuff to list them, let alone witch trial courts. You guys, even if that was totally made up, there's a witch trials place right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now still communicated other than our founders declassified, to have communicated about those places, about their use of James Madison's plan, and about why and how. He's the only one we know the name of as our founder. Black people's period. It is time. It is time.